Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Garrison. In the spirit of the trees, in the spirit of all living nature, I want to welcome you to this session of Humanity Rising. Exactly 7 minutes ago, the planet Jupiter and the planet Neptune came into exact conjunction. And that means that if you take the Earth, you go out to Jupiter, and you go out to Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, Jupiter and Neptune are exactly aligned with the Earth. They're exact alignment with the Earth. And that generates very powerful energy. Many astrologers who know a lot more about these matters, and certainly I do, say that today, April 12th, is possibly the most potentiated day of the year, because Jupiter symbolizes royalty. It symbolizes abundance. It symbolizes great possibility. It symbolizes the capacity to do all things. It is the Jupiter was the king of the Greco-Roman pantheon, Zeus in the Greek pantheon. So a Jupiterian energy is the royal energy of great possibility and great command. Neptune is the ocean. Neptune is boundless. Neptune is the archetypal energy of all possibilities. And so when you bring Jupiter and Neptune together in a conjunction, it just gives us inordinate capacities to express ourselves and to animate our dreams and to do great things in the world. So I just wanted to bring that energy into our session today because we're going to be great possibilities in a moment of someone actually running for the governorship of the great state of California. If you separated California from the rest of the United States, it would be the 8th largest nation in the world. That's how big and capacious California is, and we have someone who's running for the governorship. So this is a great day to talk about something that audacious and that boundless in its possibilities. But before we dive into that, let us pause, as we always do, as we begin our Humanity Rising sessions in the midst of all the tumult, all the craziness, all the chaos. Let us just center ourselves and just come into your body. Close your eyes if you can and attune yourself with your heart. And for the next minute, just imagine your connection out into the solar system. Attune with Jupiter. Attune with Neptune. And feel their energies coming into your soul. Thank you, everyone. Now it's my great pleasure to welcome back to Humanity Rising my good friend and colleague, Kurt Krueger, who many of you know has been very active in the After Chat group and the Peace Action Lab that we have been developing. He's been curating a number of our programs over the nearly 2 years that Humanity Rising has been unfolding, now over 450 sessions, and going stronger and stronger as we continue to keep up with world events. So Kurt, I really want to thank you for everything that you've done to support and make Humanity Rising so robust. And it was Kurt that had the suggestion of bringing in Reinette Senum, who's running for governor today. And this is the perfect day, as I indicated, for such a discussion. So Kurt, I'll turn the program over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jim. First of all, I welcome you all with great respect and love. This is a time when that is the most necessary thing that we can do. The Peace Lab started with the one idea of bringing peace in everything with peace. Obviously, we have our energy to be able to focus on that. We don't need to focus on other things. And when you get to hear Reinette in this whole day exploring how governance of one of the largest economies in the world can change from being run by special interests into something that is for all the people and the planet. Imagine that. Just put your mind around having peace in everything, where you are, wherever you are. Doesn't have to be in California. You could be in Nepal. You could be in Sri Lanka. You could be in Australia. You could be anywhere in the world. We can create this. If we can go to the moon, if we can have computers, we can have peace in everything with peace. And I'd love to have Reinette 5 minutes just say the basics of your platform. And then I'm going to ask you a very strong question. All right? Go for it.
Thank you so much. Jim and Kurt, thank you so much for this opportunity. And it's really lovely to be talking to everyone. And I'm very honored. And to let you know, we will be on the move as I'm talking today. We're on our way to actually meet with farmers later this afternoon. And so just to let you know a little bit about myself, I'm from Northern California, a small town called Nevada City, and I'm a two-time mayor and council person. And in fact, I've been very much involved in the last 20 years of making Nevada City more resilient and sustainable. It was in about 2004, I became very concerned with the state of the world. And of course, now that looks like the good old days. And so I decided to, if I was going to make the world a better place, I'd start with my own community. So I started an organization called APPLE, Alliance for a Post-Petroleum Local Economy, with my community members, and is really based upon resiliency. And so my whole entire thing was really building up our local and regional economy, our food network, local energy production, and also just reweaving the frayed fabric of community as much as possible, so we could be resilient towards any type of turbulent times in the future, which I was pretty much, pretty much aware that was going to happen, in the near future. So here we are in turbulent times, and we're watching gas well over $6 and the impacts it's having, to say the least. And so what happened was back in 2020, July, I was ready to start my third term. I had been elected for my third term of 4 years. And by that time, I'd been mayor when COVID had hit, and I began to see behind the scenes some narratives that were being forced upon the public, and we were not allowed to ask questions or question the narrative. And so rather, in July 8th, then taking my oath for my third term, I stepped down as council member, and I actually called out my constituents, my city council members, and I called them out for crimes against humanity. And I said at that point, I was stepping down to step up. At the time, I thought that meant I was just start doing interviews on YouTube, which I did. It was called Reinette Senum's Chew on This. And one of the interviewees that I had was Dr. Sherry Tenpenny. And that was the first time she ever talked about mechanisms of injury around the coronavirus injection. That went viral, got millions and millions of hits. And of course, YouTube took me down immediately and banned that channel. So I moved over to YouTube or to BitChute, and I continued to do the same, interviewing a slew of incredible people. Of course, Sherry Tenpenny, Dr. David Martin, Dr. Carrie Madej, Dr. Christian Northrup, also Kevin Jenkins of Global Urban Health, of course, Dr. Peter McCullough, and the list goes on and on. And the reason why I did that was because it's actually the job of elected officials and so on to actually keep their constituents informed. And of course, our elected officials were not doing that. So I was trying to do that. That void has now been filled. We have many, many people doing these type of interviews, which is fantastic. People are getting informed. But when I was doing these interviews, I was then on Del Bigtree's The High Wire. And after that, I had people around the state saying, would you please run? I said, I have no interest in running. And but I continue to watch the state of California decline and the lack of leadership. And I realized that maybe I needed to, because I didn't trust anyone as much as I trusted myself. And so my partner, Susan and I, we've been together for 14 years. We talked about it for a couple months. And the individuals were asking me to run. I said, I'd be willing to consider this. But I said, if you want just another campaign, I have no interest. You've got plenty of candidates for that. But if you want to do something extraordinary that's never been done before, I'm willing to jump in. And the two requisites were simply no party affiliation whatsoever, because I cannot serve a party and the people and the planet simultaneously. And the other thing is just making sure seventh generation principle that we serve that every decision we make today should serve 7 generations from now.
That's the key. That's seventh generation. And some people don't know exactly what that is. So to explain that, imagine we're living today and we're doing things to be able to, let's say, get the environment a little bit cleaner. How do we do that? If it affects the 7th generation down ahead of us adversely, we do not do it. We only do those things that will help enhance, rejuvenate our life for them to live a better life, because there's going to be a heck of a lot more of them than us. Unless, of course, the 6th great extinction actually does complete itself. So this is a beautiful experience that you're offering us in the 7th generation teaching. Now, we had a woman named Carolyn Baumgardner. She also is one of the people that are involved deeply in the Peace Lab. There's plenty of people, and we need obviously more people to know that you can participate in the Peace Lab's work, because it includes environment, justice, it includes the spiritual fulfillment, it includes every aspect of living. So, Reinette, what is your single most important, non-negotiable personal value that you intend to utilize as governor to activate others committed to caring more through seeing your model that value?
You know, one of the things I learned I did a solo winter crossing of Alaska back in '94. And one of the most profound experiences I had on that trip was when I had been skiing down the frozen Yukon River, which was the only road I knew. And I had a schedule, it began to melt. And I had no other way to make it across the rest of the state. So I stayed in an Athabasca native village just by the Arctic Circle. And I decided to wait there and figure out what my next move was going to be, either give up, come back the next year and pick up where I left off, or just abandon altogether. And I realized that ultimately I had 2 options: give up or find a different way to continue. So I'm going to truncate this story here, but I ended up pulling out the last canoe built in this village 20 years before from a melting snowbank, and it was dilapidated. But I thought, that's what I'll do. I'll build myself a canoe. So I ended up building this canoe. And what happened was when I was getting ready to, and I cut down 3 trees, the Athabasca natives lent me the tools. And when they did this, they saw me dragging the logs. And of course, now they think, oh, she's going to try to build a canoe. And so they had a fatherly talk with me, one of the gentlemen by the name of Herb. And he said, you start building this canoe, we're going to call you Fruitcake. And so I started building the canoe, and they started calling me Fruitcake. Yeah, Fruitcake, passing by every day. I was, with these 18-foot long hand planes of wood, and I was hand planing them 5 hours a day, 5 days a week. And, but this is what happened, is after I had planed all this wood and submerged it in the local muskrat pond, and then I pulled it all out and put it at my feet ready to assemble. When I began to assemble, I saw this most beautiful thing. Instead of them coming by saying Fruitcake, they started coming by saying, hey, I got a C-clamp if you need a C-clamp for that. And then someone else came by saying, I got some galvanized screws if you need some. And then someone else came by saying, I got some oil-based marine paint. You like blue and red. And I saw this beautiful insight into how we work as a humanity. And I realized that we can talk all we want. We can show blueprints all we want. But when somebody sees somebody doing something and they're ready for a great journey and they're building this boat and they can see it in a tangible physical form, people get motivated and inspired by that, and they want to be part of that. And that's how I've worked for 20 years. I'm a hands-on. I mean, I'm literally hands-on. My hands will be dirty and blistered at the end of the day. I'm a hands-on person because I know that I can sit there and talk all I want, hold all the meetings and workshops I want. But when I go out there and I start doing something in the physical, they will stop, drop things, and join in. And so as a governor, that's how I'm going to work. I'm going to actually be out there in the field, talking to people, going up and down the state. And when we're out there, rebuilding the topsoil, when we're out there, expanding and growing the community gardens, I'm going to be there with a shovel, in my hands. And this is what I've done over and over and over again. It's not theoretical. This, for a fact, I know works.
It works in the Peace Lab too. It's just like the smile. Smiles bring people happiness. Right. Simple little things. And the Peace Lab's link on other networks has tons of ideas to bring forth peace in everything with peace. And, one of the points that I want to for sure acknowledge is the 7th generation principle came from our indigenous brothers and sisters. Mm-hmm. It was not us. Mm-hmm. We're indigenous too. Mm-hmm. We just happen to be indigenous to a different land in a different way. Mm-hmm. And when we tune into our nature, our true nature, because we are nature, we're just part of it. And some people think we're in boxes. Obviously, we're not. And this is the beauty that you got to experience, and how nature collaborates, like all the people coming with you to join you in your efforts to get you going where you're going.
That's right.
That's perfect. Now, another little query. This is again, my background has been in education. 47 years of teaching in middle school to university on 5 continents. And the education system in California used to be the top in the country, and maybe even the world, who knows? We like to brag about those things. It's not that now, and it is not educating people for the future. It's stagnant. It's old school, so to speak. It is not taken in advance to use both sides of the brain, because my phone holds all the stuff that could be in my left brain. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I get to use my right brain and the left and the heart and the gut, because that allows us to tune into that inspiration, enthusiasm, and so on. So how can we bring that education back to being one of the best in the world or anywhere else? Because we're models in their country, anywhere in the world.
Well, first and foremost, to be very frank, the teachers union here in California is a real problem. It's a real issue. I mean, we look at what's the driving force behind the degeneration of our education system. It's actually the teachers union. But first and foremost, we also have to understand that the public education system originally, devised by the Carnegies and the Rockefellers, was to do twofold. The first was to remove any possibility of dissent from the individual and to also remove all originality. So they basically would just become a good workforce. And so rather than having an education system that's focusing on making better humans, we have an education system that is basically dumbing us down so we don't ask questions, we don't critically think, we just do as we're told. And so I would really, once again, try to disband the teachers union as we know it, and which is a very unpopular thing to say here in California because they're extraordinarily powerful, but it's true. When I look over and over again what's happening, it's the teachers union always behind us here in California. And the other thing is really allow parental control and choice in what their children's education system is. Really allow more school choice and so on too, because the truth of the matter is nobody knows their children better than their parents. What's happened now is COVID has caused parents for the first time to actually be involved in the children's education system. And they were horrified to find out that it's basically turned into indoctrination camps. And so now parents are realizing what's been going on. They're saying, okay, we're not doing this any longer. So what's really best is to have a multitude of different type of schools available, whether it's individual pods, homeschooling, smaller schools, private schools, public schools, but really the type of schooling that fits the child's nature and personality. And the other thing that's really, really important is that we've really gotten completely hyper-focused on going out there and getting a degree. Higher education, that's wonderful, but that's not the only thing. We need electricians, we need carpenters, right? We need blacksmith. We need people who actually know how to use their hands, make things and fix things and create things. And that is no longer the case. We have young people who have degrees today, college degrees, who spend tens and tens of thousands of dollars, and they're now living home with their parents, and they think that if they can't go get this real lucrative desk job, then they just can't simply work whatsoever, not realizing that as a plumber or even a contractor, you can actually make a nice, lovely sum of money. And so we've got to rework the education system, and of course bringing back art and music and cursive writing, for God's sake. That is a part that stimulates the brain, that helps us all across the board, right, in our lives and how we think and so on. So that's a big piece too. And also, I was very much involved with what's called 4 Elements. And this was about coyote tracking, indigenous skills and stuff, teaching children how to be in tune with nature, with tracking the animals, with starting fires, with hunting, with survival, right? And this is one of the best things too. We've got to get children away from the screens. There's a multitude of reasons why screens are bad for children, very bad for children. In fact, in Europe, they don't even allow children to have these type of screens. So, just making it, once again, a better human, well-roundedness, and letting these kids go out there and fall down a few times, right? And learn how to get back up again. I mean, that's just, instead we treat each other so preciously that we're afraid to go out there and fall on our face every now and then. But I can tell you from experience, that's just how you do it. And so it's time. We're in a relationship crisis with everything around us. And that includes the education system. There's a lot of reformation that is needed. And education is one of the first places to start, because the education system is our future. It's our children. They're
the way they're paid. Having taught in Los Angeles School District, I was also part of the union and so on. Why? Because we needed to get paid better, because that's the only way you could get paid better is if you unionize, because nobody was going to give any teachers much pay. When I started teaching in 1969 in Los Angeles, within 3 years, I had taken my wife to Europe, toured Europe for 3 months on 13 different countries, after having picked up my BMW 2002 in Munich and drove around and had a great time, shipped it back. I could not do that at the end of my career. Not even close. Again, no money for the people who are making the doctors, lawyers, and everybody else what they are or can be. And we have, like you mentioned, a blinder system on, like you said, this blaming it on the elite and so on. We don't have to look at any blame at all. What we get to do is look at the solutions for what we do. And like you said about this nature, it is the most incredible teacher in life, and making bruises happen and exploring the Arctic and whatever. Way people.
Well, when I was out in the woods and by myself, and this is the other thing that it's a real serious issue, and that is boredom is the most important thing for a child to experience. And that boredom.
You just blanked out. One of the things.
And the bird, and you sense nature. What we're doing is we're not allowing children.
Sorry
to
interrupt, but the connection seems rather bad outside. Where you were before inside, we could hear you much better.
Yeah,
thank you.
She's actually in travel time because she is going toward.
Let me see. Is there a? Give me 1 second here. Give me a second here. Okay, so let me just see if I can get a hotspot going. Wait 1 second, folks.
You're fine now.
I get a little trick here. Okay. I'm back in the house though, but give me a second. So what I was saying while I look for this is that boredom is one of the most important things for our children to experience right now, because I'm going to set my hotspot here. Give me a second here. And boredom is not allowed. Boredom is not allowed.
Well, boredom is not allowed in any school if you're going to have a quality school. How can a person be bored when you can learn? When I was teaching history, if a person was into art, we used his or her skill in art to get them to learn history by making pictures of a particular time period we're studying and finding out why that happened and how, and making presentations with their beautiful art and talking about it and so on. There's so much that we can do in exploring out. We had to drive them to the beach that was 12 miles away. Nice, Los Angeles. And they had never been to the beach all their life, 14 years, because some teachers would actually get them to go and do that. We didn't even have permission slips. We just talked to the parents. If you want the kids to go, we're going to drive kids to the beach, and so on and so forth. But there's a lot of fear that's instilled in people. It's the separation demon. It's like separating all the different subjects. When we educate, we should use the talents of the students to dive into that interest that they have. Like if they're interested in war, we can ask them to explore that and all the weapons and all that, but also what could prevent getting them to be challenged in those ways. The education system needs to be education rather than this hierarchical, this pontificating education that brings us to, yes, sir, you're right. Oh, no. Oh, you're the expert. Okay, I'll listen to you. Nature flows together and learns to live peacefully and harmoniously. So character education is super important. And Peace Lab did a program on character inclusion for regenerative societies. And it's a powerful program with 3 different programs offered. So please, go ahead.
So do you have another question?
Oh, I have plenty of questions.
So, and just to let your viewers know, we're here in the Malibu area, and we're going to be jumping down onto the PCH. So if there's a little breakup, just know I'll rejoin you in a moment. This is the one little tricky area I'm kind of concerned about being on the road, is leaving the house and getting to the PCH, which is about 2 minutes away. So I have my hotspot on, but I don't know how this is going to go.
Well, next question is, how would you counter the influence of money in politics and life in general?
Well, how to counter money? that's again, I go back to the education system in many ways. That's starting to teach people different value system, because right now we value money. We value wealth and greed over everything else. And that's where we've got to actually change what's valuable in our lives. And that's where I think also connecting to nature, right? And connecting to our community and valuing what community is, and engaging children differently, because right now it's all about what kind of education are you going to get so you can go out there and make a lot of money. And at some point, well, at this point in time, we now see what's really going on. And it's actually not serving us whatsoever, because children, unless they're not making a lot of money, don't want to do anything. And this is young people as well. So again, and this is the thing is that I have discovered this when working with children. When you engage them in hands-on projects and programs, they light up. And I'll give you an example with the screens. With the screens, kids are on screens all the time and they're in the school system. But when you get them out in nature and you get them involved, right, and you get their hands in the soil and they're making things, they're touching things, they wake up. They wake up.
Reinette, you may want to turn off your video.
Yeah. And you'll have a better flow with your energy in regard to your voice. The bandwidth for your visual takes a lot. Yeah. Even my dog is speaking up. So getting out in nature can allow people to be able to look at exploring life, because schools have 4 walls and it's enclosed, and they've even done research in bringing plants into the schools and bringing beauty into the schools in art. The schoolrooms that have the plants and have the beauty in the classroom actually outproduce the classes that are maybe neighboring classes that don't have the beautiful plants, that don't maybe even explore something about that plant, have somebody in charge of taking care of it and so on, instead of thinking it's all done by custodians. The Japanese use a method of, there's no custodians needed in the schools in Japan. Why? Because everybody cleans their own room. All the students sweep and clean and so on, just like they would at home. And if they're not doing it at home, they didn't learn it at home. We get to teach character education again. And the first 2 values of the character education program that I found is the best, the living values education program, are love, which brings peace, which brings all the other values. And when we teach this idea about love, when people are not feeling peaceful, they'll say, a student will go up to the person and say, you look like you don't feel so good. Are you okay? Why? Because they have love and they know how to share it. And it may or may not be taught at home. And if it's not taught at home, it is something that we can easily bring forth into the school system. It's been in a number of schools and had 90% reduction in violence at a refugee camp. Those are usually very violent. When schools do it, no police officers needed, so we could hire another teacher instead, because police officers get paid about the same as some teachers. She mentioned about unions. Reinette talked about this teachers' union. It does need to be changed for its focus, because it has allowed too many teachers that are not quality teachers to stay in the profession. And they have only been focusing maybe on trying to get some money for the schools, but it hasn't worked. So that the biggest, most powerful union in California is the prison guards union. And Reinette will be speaking about incarceration, and she will be speaking about the idea of reformation of people while they are in prison, so that when they get out, they're changed. In 1983, I was teaching at Stockholm University. Well, I'll get back to that story. We have Reinette back on. Reinette, are you audible now? You may not have to be on visual, but right now it looks like you froze again. Yeah, she has frozen. So I'll get back to this quick story.
There is no service.
Yeah, it's something I gotta cut through. Otherwise, we're gonna go to.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, yes.
Okay. It's amazing. We have 5G antennas up and down this road everywhere, and there's no service. I don't know how that could be.
But Reinette, you should turn off your video.
Yeah.
Okay, you got it.
Yeah.
Okay, give me one moment. All right, there we go. Okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, so far.
Okay, great.
Go ahead, Kurt.
Basically, in Sweden, I gave a program for the Swedish prison wardens and priests, because in Sweden, every prison has a priest. And
Kurt, why don't we focus on Reinette while
Okay,
she's live?
Yeah, definitely.
Reinette, why don't you talk a little bit about your policy on incarceration?
Yes.
Very good. So incarceration, as you can tell, here in California, we have a very high recidivism rate. And of course, the crime is rampant right now. And I think it's absolutely inhumane and incomprehensible that we have prisoners who are in prison for years, if not decades, and they are, when released in the middle of the night with $200 in their pockets. And they've never been reskilled. They've not received therapy. They're not ready for entry into the world. They have no home or halfway house to go to. They have no system in place for a job or any type of wraparound services. And at the very least, when we have individuals who are in prison, we should be making available to them every type of class and skill available so they can make themselves better humans. Just like children should be made into better humans with an education system, we should be doing the exact same thing in the prison system. Because we're setting ourselves up for failure. By not doing this, we're actually setting ourselves and society up for failure.
Totally. The recidivism in Sweden and in Norway, they have 20% recidivism. In California, it's 80%.
Right.
Yeah, and we incarcerate people who come across the border legally or illegally sometimes, and get them into places that are company owned rather than state owned. And it's all about housing them in a horrible situation. Adelanto is one of them, out in the desert, because my wife has visited people from Africa and other places that got caught coming across the border. And they don't learn anything. They don't help them. They hardly feed them. And big companies are making big money. So
Right.
how would we do something about that here in California?
Well, first of all, we have to stop the for-profit prison system. That's it. And the unions, right? The unions run the prison system also is for profit. It's about the bottom line. That is not what the prison system should be about. It should not be about profit over people. And that's one of the biggest fundamental changes we should be making. Get big money out of the prison system.
You know, there was a question in the chat actually just now, and it was about healthcare and how unaffordable healthcare is. How do we care for our health in California if we're spending so much on rehabilitation in the prisons, or are we spending less money on rehabilitation in the prisons because we're putting rehabilitation to be really active and working? Reinette? Oh, it looks like we lost Reinette again. Oy. Okay. Actually,
I suggest, Kurt, that we thank Reinette. This is getting a little choppy, and maybe have an early close here to our program. Unless there's anything else you would like to say as a comment, people can go to Reinette's website. It's Reinette at electreinette.com. And we want to wish her all the best. I'm sorry that she was traveling and couldn't keep up with the internet situation. But
yeah, I'm
Kurt,
still
is there
here.
anything else that you would like to say before we bring this to a close?
Well, I would be continuing on her ideas on her platform and the questions that I had of her. I know some of her answers, so I'd love to be able to bring forth some of that. But if she can actually stay, real live instead of having this breakup.
Right.
So,
yeah. We're just getting over the past. Can you hear me, Kurt? We're just getting over the past.
Yes.
Yeah.
We can hear you. You're clear now. Yes.
Okay. So, and it's weird. We have full bars, but we keep cutting out for some reason. So I'll make sure you can hear me right now.
We can.
Okay. So you were asking a question a moment ago about the education system, the prison system, and so on, but you were breaking up. If you want to ask that again.
Well, actually, it was in relation to, does the prison system get saved by doing the rehabilitation, and if that money can then go to healthcare, or how would we deal with healthcare in California, because it is so expensive for some people, especially elders, and they're the ones that made America what it is now, and now they're not even being cared for so much. It's a big question that came up in the chat.
Healthcare, if you can hear me. First of all, healthcare in California should begin with food. We have a healthcare system that never ever talks about nutrition. And if you don't talk about nutrition first, you're not talking about healthcare. So we need to focus once again on what is it we're putting into our bodies. And then when we look at the prescriptions, most people are on 8, 10, 12, 15 different prescriptions. We're price of prescription drugs, but we have to read prescription drugs because of the host of side effects. And so
yeah, we have to focus on
when we talk about healthcare, we're talking one of the best things for us, not just physically, eating healthy food, but learning how to grow our own food. And one of the reasons why is because when you put your hands into the soil, we know that's beneficial. We know that's actually even good for you mentally and emotionally. And so we have to really start talking about a holistic healthcare system that is not just myopically focused on prescription drugs. And that's where our focus is right now, are prescription drugs.
Yes. And how can we get that changed? This is a key question.
Well, again, we have such a for-profit medical system. When you are actually out there trained, they don't talk about nutrition differently. So they actually have a holistic approach, and they talk about nutrition maybe a half a day to a day in medical school. That's it. So you have to change actually how they're being trained. Then we actually have to go out there and have to actually educate the public on your health begins with what you're putting in your body. That is not part of the education system. That can be, part of the education system within the school system, part of the public outreach, the public health department in our counties. I mean, there's a lot of educating people around how to just eat well and just start there. Once we do that, everything changes.
So the healthcare is actually looking at being healthy rather than once you're sick. It sounds like it's a Chinese method.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So people would be saving money and not polluting their body with all these chemicals in the body that are not normal to the body. Is that what you're saying?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
But a big problem is
because
the mind is also.
Yes. If you have a healthy body, it can fend off disease.
Okay, now again, this mental attitude, as well as the stresses that are happening in the world, but the mental attitude is very seldom ever strengthened. So how would we start to be able to strengthen the mind in regard to being more positive, or because it seems like all we're fed on the news is negativity. And if people are feeling negative and things are going to hell, their immune system is down. It's proven that that's so. how would you, let's say?
Well, the first thing I would do is I would recommend people turn off their television and never turn it back on again. I would start there. The next thing I would say is isolation is the worst thing for you, mentally and emotionally. Isolation, which is what we've been forced into for almost 2 years. Even now, people are outside their homes, but they just still feel isolated in the mind. They forgot how to socialize. I have people saying, I just don't know how to socialize any longer. Our children don't know how to socialize. Socializing is absolutely key to our mental, emotional health. And then, of course, the physical health will follow that. So I go back to communing. Having community gardens. In fact, community gardens is actually a very big part of this whole entire campaign, is because what people don't realize is back in the 60s and 70s, the majority of town squares in America were taken out and removed for the freeways and the highway access. And you literally took out the heart of our communities, the nexus of where people would come together and say, Joe's having a barn raising tomorrow, Betty Sue's sick, can you make her lunch today? That was removed, and that has really eviscerated not only the fab go out there and build new, but we certainly can go out there and start community gardens and having people commune once again. And the intergenerational connections are also very, very key to our overall well-being. What we're proposing, Kurt and Jim, what we're proposing is so radical, it's old-fashioned.
Well, and it's interesting what you said is that in the 70s is when there was the big change, especially getting more chemicals into the life in the growing of crops and monoculture crops and so on. And we found currently that the best size of a farm is actually around 40 acres, and that you can have and a multitudinal amount of different kinds of crops and animals treated best for the animal at the time and so on, so that people can have fresh, whole, organic kinds of food that promote the health rather than having 700 chemicals come into them.
That's right. That's right. Well, we've been living in a world where we've been globalizing and expanding, and we thought bigger was better. And now what we're coming to realize is smaller is better, right? And also more deeply connected and rooted. And that, many friends is not really as valuable as a smaller amount of friends that are more well-connected. And I realized that, over time, we're starting to come, especially because of COVID, people are starting to understand this and they're starting to value this. And there's a really important story I'd love to share with you guys that's had a big impact on me as well. I'm sure many of you are familiar with Dr. Gabor Mate, who wrote In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts. And this is regarding addiction, where addiction, a lot of the wounds begin in the womb when you're being cared by your mother. And he was talking about what he was seeing in North America. And what he was seeing in society in this breakdown, he equated with what he was seeing in an aquarium in Vancouver, where he is from. And he's very well known for mental, emotional well-being and homelessness and what leads to addiction, and those wounds. And what he said he saw was that in this aquarium in Vancouver, there was a female beluga whale born in captivity. And 12 years later, she gave birth to her own baby beluga whale. And
boy, you just cut out on your... Reinette, you just cut out on your story. I'm sorry that you didn't get the story out on.
Fine. But what happened was within a matter of a few days, the beluga whale did not know what to do. Okay. Are you there now? I've got signals. Can you hear me? Okay. We're almost. Okay. On the blue. Give me 1 second. We're almost in the 101. All right. Let's see. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you can hear me? All right. So the female beluga whale had given birth to a baby beluga whale, and the birth went fine, and the baby's health began to decline over a matter of a few days. And so the mother beluga whale did not know what to do. The handlers, the experts, nobody knew what to do. So out of desperation, they brought in the last female beluga whale born in captivity. And once she was in the aquarium with the mother beluga whale, she began to teach the mother how to mother. And the baby beluga's health turned around in a matter of a few days. And so this was a story that Dr. Gabor Mate had shared with us at Bioneers during his plenary. And when he said that to me, it struck me so strongly because I realized my age group, I'm 56, I had my birthday a couple days ago, but I was the generation of the latchkey generation, correct? And I had older parents. My parents were not the latchkey parents, but my friends' parents were. And I realized that we were the first generation to be born in the aquarium in America, and that we were basically, with each subsequent generation being born, that door to the wild was closing on us. And so it's very important that we do everything in our power to reconnect the children, the young, with their grandparents and their great grandparents. Because when we lose that connection to the wild, our health declines. So the intergenerational connection is absolutely key to the seventh generation principle. And if I had the ability to make a law right now, that law would be, I would require every single kindergarten and elementary school playground to back up to a nursing home where they would have to share the playground.
You know, that was something that we tried to do at Van Nuys Middle School. Across the street was an elder home. It was a retirement home, very fancy. And I asked my principal to be able to get the elders to come over and maybe read to the kids or tell stories, or the kids go over to be able to chat with the elders. Also to use their swimming pool. It wouldn't allow us to even use the company, the big retirement home would allow us the use of the swimming pool, but the school district didn't allow it because of insurance and so on. It's insanity how our system is so close-minded and structured where life can't evolve and flow with the wisdom of the ages helping the youth, and the youth also enlivening the elders and giving them the knowledge that they have that they're learning and so on, and telling them stories. It's something that is a two-way street. And we get to be able to create that two-way street with everybody's help. Everybody.
That's right. That's right. Well, and we've become a product. We're not humans any longer. We're a product. And there are bean counters who determine what we can and cannot do according to corporations' bottom line. And that has got to change.
So here's the key question that came up from Eli Klein from the Universal Foundation for Holistic Design. He said, what is your plan for altering the monetary system? What are your plans for changing out of a system of unfettered capitalism?
Well, there's not much I can do as a governor as far as, the Federal Reserve, but I could certainly advocate for the end of the Federal Reserve, because I'm sure everyone of your listeners is very familiar with who they are and what they are and what they do, and how basically it's a form of enslavement ultimately. But beyond advocating for that, what I recommend, and I've been doing this for 7 years, is it's interesting, but most people don't realize that we can pick and choose what it is that we back our currency up with, what the asset is. And about 7 years ago, I began and launched a time bank. This is not a bartering system. This is actually literally where we have an online banking account, and down to the minute, we keep an accounting of your kindness, of your good deeds, of your kind transactions. And I've been doing this for 7 years, and I have hundreds and hundreds of personal hours where I've done some gardening for someone, or I've cleaned out their gutters, or I've driven them to the airport. And then I, in return, get this kindness in my bank account, and I can go out there and have somebody take me to the airport, or house sit my cats, or whatever it takes. And so my point is that we should not have just one currency. We should have a multitude of different currencies, because I think it's important we don't have all our eggs in one basket. And what's really wonderful about a time bank is a few things. There's a gentleman by the name of Dr. Edgar Kahn who actually began the U.S. Time Bank. And it was back in the 80s when he went to the London School of Economics that he began to see this perfect storm brewing, which was the baby boomers were getting older, that social services were drying up, and the dollar was losing its value. And he said this was the perfect storm because at some point, we were not going to be able to do what we used to do, which was based upon the core economy of friends and neighbors and family members helping each other out. We had over the generations become dependent upon the dollar economy. And that worked when people had dollars, but the dollars were drying up and they were losing their value. So he started the time banking as a tool to help reweave that frayed fabric of community and to get people back into doing what we used to do for each other. So my point is this: what's beautiful about the time bank is it allows us to use our kindness because we're already doing kind things, but no one's keeping an accounting. The only reason why dollars work or zeros and ones in your
Oh, you're breaking up again. Oosh.
account works because somebody, and you can easily have an accounting of computer, but you can also have an accounting of kindness. So what's beautiful about time banking, for instance, is you're diversifying your currency. You are able to leverage the dollars you have for your mortgage or your rent or your car payment, but then you can use the time bank, right? And you can use that kindness currency and save the dollars for the other things that you need to pay that within the system, that dollar system. So what I've been really promoting for people is to diversify the type of currency they have, whether it's silver and gold, and of course a time bank. And then of course, as I said when I began to answer this question, one of the best things we can do is advocate to bring an end to the Federal Reserve. Yeah.
Now another question comes up. That's obviously something that we can work for and put our efforts in. Again, Eli mentioned another question that is, what is your plan for reversing the mechanisms in place in our systems which produce and perpetrate the idea of constant growth within a fixed area?
Well, I'm a very, very big advocate of local and regional authority and economies. And that was my whole entire thing, was we've turned into this globalized system, right? And we see the damage it does, transporting goods from a long distance, raping other cultures, for their minerals, for their resources, and so on. And one of the best things we can do is actually build up our local economies and decentralize. The more that we decentralize from this global system, the more protected we'll be from any kind of shocks, whether they're fuel shocks, interruption shocks, economic shocks. And so really the best thing to do is really to get to know your neighbor and go from, this is what COVID has done for us, is that we've been living now for generations as consumers. It is now time for us to go from consumers to becoming producers, where we produce on a local, regional level. And that is what I'm promoting. Like, look at guys, you're not going to be a consumer like you used to be. Those days are over. Not that there won't be some global trade, but it's just not going to be what it used to be. We have to start focusing on what are you and your community, how are you going to produce an asset of some value? What does that look like? And that could be you have land and you produce something, or it might be a skill that you share with your neighbors.
Beautiful. You mentioned about consumers, and that Maria Pune put a question out. What consumer protection guidelines would you create when it comes to protecting citizens' private emails and data?
Well, the email, the data collection, absolutely 100% should be illegal. And I think that is something that if you have corporations and heads of companies who are collecting this data, they need to be dragged into court, because your personal data it belongs to you. It belongs to you. It's like having your own house or your car. Somebody cannot just take it and use it and go for a joyride. So I believe in 100%, and that especially is more true now than ever with our children. With COVID, this has allowed this infiltration within the school system to usurp and collect data and monitor and surveil our children. And they're setting them up ultimately for what's, as we know, is the Chinese social credit system, which would turn America into an open air prison. So I'm very staunch around the privacy of data collection and personal information and surveillance and control. And I think that is very paramount to our overall well-being, because if we are completely having our personal information usurped and used against us, which is what's been happening, it's being weaponized against us, we're in deep trouble. And this is something that is not on the conversation block. People do not want to discuss this because the technocrats, as you all know, are in control of a lot of the information that we're sharing online. And it's very clear they don't even want us to talk about the data collection, which is a huge problem right now. And so I would just make it flat out illegal for companies to share this data without your knowledge, without your consent? And if so, they're committing an offense.
Beautiful, beautiful. Just totally. Oh, it's. If I was normally fearful, it would be scary, because they can do so much with it against us instead of for us. It's all this idea of greed and so on, it seems. Wow.
And I'd like to add one thing. This is why the 7-generation principle is so key, because I've been saying this for years. Even when I was a mayor and a council member, I was asking, what is it we're measuring ourselves by? Beyond just like a recall or being reelected, how are we measuring our elected officials' decision making? What is the measurement for their decision making? What is the measurement for our laws? How we show up in society? And so it's very important that we actually use that 7-generation principle as a metrics for corporations, for leaders, for anybody in the private or public sector. It's like we have to have a measurement, because we have not had that, and that's why we're flailing so badly. Because when a leader makes a decision, you can't get even an answer from them. Like, why did you make this decision? But if you now have the 7-generation principle as part of our culture and how we make decisions, when you have, let's say, a legislator make a decision on a bill and they say yes to it, we can ask them, okay, tell me, Senator so-and-so, how does that serve the 7th generation? Right? And if it's not serving the 7th generation, then they're basically serving a different master.
We don't know. That's one of the causes for everybody to be so apathetic in politics now. So many people just don't even go out and vote. And that was another query that came up in the chat, is this idea of apathy that is causing people not to go out and vote. They don't think that they can either trust the people that they're voting for or whatever. There's so many reasons.
Right. And we also have hedge fund managers too, who are taking this data, right? This is data driven and information, and they're using it against us, right? So we have Wall Street as well, that's completely out of control, and they're using all this information and they're using it against us, and they're dictating what's happening in our lives and what's going on. They understand us better than we understand ourselves. So there's a lot of wrangling that we have to do to get control of these different corners of society and Wall Street and corporate America that are out of control. And what's happened is that the laws have not been able to keep up to the technology. So laws are slow to come around. It's like a cruise liner. It takes a long time to turn it around. Laws do not just happen overnight really fast. So once again, though, I go back to that 7th generation principle. We may not have the laws in place, but we can have the principles in place.
Oh boy, that's one of the things that people don't think we have any of. We have no principles anymore. And again, this character inclusion seems to be something that can begin to get the principles, but having the 7th generation as a model, who's ever said that? This can be done anywhere in the world. And so we're setting up a design, as Bucky Fuller said, that will create a new reality and bring forth more and more peace in everything, and
that's right.
With peace.
That's right. And the other thing is too, what's really important about this campaign, because I have people saying, well, how can you get beyond a rigged election or this or that, right? And I said, look, I understand that. I said, but this campaign supersedes election cycles, right? And the 2022 election. This is about a cultural shift. This is about how people show up as leaders within their own community. And when I'm a governor, we will go out there and we will do amazing things, but this is not a one-person job. This is all hands on deck. So I've been challenging people along the campaign trail to run for every position they possibly can, from the school board to the city, to the county, to the state and the federal level. Run. I do not care about your party affiliation. That is so yesterday. It's about looking forward and that 7th generation principles. So we're asking people to run at every single level and make decisions looking through the lens of the 7th generation principle and showing up as leaders in your own community. And that might just be your neighborhood. right? That might just be within your own job or your own business, but we're asking people to actually start leading and not. And again, the education system has convinced us that the leaders have everything taken care of. Don't worry, we don't need your involvement, and we got it covered. And that all the power rests in their hands. That their legislation and their policies are basically determining our future. Well, that's not true. It's a tiny little decisions we make every single day that add up over time that sets our course. And so people have got to understand they're far more powerful and impactful than we've been led to believe.
Beautiful, beautiful. It's totally true. And getting, like you said, getting that out there is the key factor. There's some people supported a guy named Bernie Sanders for one of the elections. And those people thought that he was ripped off of his being elected by the Democratic Party. So I've lived in Asia, Africa, Australia, Europe, and North America. And every place around that I've been has had some sort of graft or corruption. How do we remove that from our society as much as possible? Do you have any?
Well, first of all, the DNC and the RNC have been completely corrupted and taken over by big money because of the 2010 Supreme Court decision known as Citizens United versus the FEC. Ever since then, basically politics and representative government has been dead. So if we're going to actually have representative government, we've got to reverse Citizens United. That's a big piece of the problem. So once we do that, then we've got big money that's not, because they equate campaign finance, campaign contributions as First Amendment, right to speech. So each dollar is equivalent to the right to speech for corporations. Corporations are not people, and they have this corporate personhood. So we've got to stop that. Once we do that, then we have to also get control of the actual election cycles themselves. And that's a whole other thing, a whole other bag here in California, but we've got to purge the voter rolls. We've got to get rid of the voting machines. We've got to go back to just, there's one day you all go into the polling places and you vote on paper ballot. That's it. And the election is not called until every single ballot is absolutely counted. And at this point in time, we just need people to be much more engaged in the whole entire election process. So there's quite a few different things we can do. But, first and foremost, the Citizens United, we've got to reverse that. And we've got to get control over the election process.
Wow. Do you have is there any other important issues the people in this state faced and what are your solutions for resolving them? Any you feel that we haven't covered today so far?
Oh my goodness. Well, I would say that the big thing is, of course, water issues and the farming issues are huge. In fact, that's what we're going to right now is we're going to Kingsburg to meet with the farmers. And, and I believe that one of the things we need to do is really focus on regenerative farming and rebuilding our topsoil and ensuring our legacy farms and ranchers and so on. And as you were talking about, that 40 acres is really like the best type of size, even when it comes to like regenerative farming. There's this beautiful synergy between farm animals and the soil and our crops that we need to teach our farmers about. And what most people don't realize is that having a really good healthy topsoil also allows us to have really good, healthy weather patterns and climate. And it also allows us to retain the water rather than having rainstorms and water runoff and just roll over a dead dirt into the waterways and into the Pacific Ocean. So, again, this is why we're building an economy on restoration and healing. It's not just healing the children and the people, but it's healing the soil and the pollinators and the farms and our connection with nature. And not that I'm, a Luddite and against technology. I support technological advances as well. But we have to make sure they're not weaponized and used against us. That's very key. So, but right now, the most important thing is returning ourselves to connecting to the land and bringing back that balance. Because once we bring the balance back to the soil and the land, we bring the balance back to ourselves.
It's interesting because we have on our property here what's called the Soil Sponge Collective. We have people,
Yes.
indigenous people, we have Tungva and Chumash friends that just live 3 miles from us. They come up and we do the regenerative gardening here. And it's called Soil Sponge Collective because the soil starts to absorb all that water that brings it down into the aquifer and so on and so forth. And it really brings the real cycle of nature back to life.
That's right.
It produces all the microbiome that also is like inside our own body. We have microbiome that helps digest our foods and assimilate the food and so on. And it's just a mirror of nature. And we get to thrive instead of barely survive. It's beautiful. Thank you. This is
yes, and I want to say, being on the campaign trail, the conversation we're having today was not really, people were not ready for it 2, 3, 4 years ago, but because of all the suffering we've been through and all the disconnection and isolation and pain that people have been through, they're hungry for this. For the first time, I'm seeing society actually ready for this conversation. And from the farmers to the city dwellers to the small town residents, people are hungry for this change. And so this is where we can start doing a massive public outreach campaign and educating people so they can restore their health within their own lives, their own bodies, their own towns, and their own planet. And this is something this is what COVID has gifted us.
Harry Ovigi is a biomimicry expert, and he was on one of our programs that the Peace Lab gave. And he said, how would you get urban and rural people to follow it? How would we get them to follow it? Is it true, just basically education, or is there other ways that we can do? Is there particular guidelines that we could set up as a state, or what?
Well, what I would do once again is a public outreach campaign and do this is that wherever you see a piece of soil, a piece of dirt, whether it's a strip on a sidewalk, it's an empty, overlooked, blighted neighborhood, city yard or lot, right? The objective is to go out and find a patch of earth somewhere public. And once you start to tend to that earth and rebuild the soil, right, and give it ground cover or create a produce garden, right? You are not only recovering and rebuilding the topsoil, but you're rebuilding your community. Because I know for a fact, I've done this on a micro level, that when you're out there in the public and you're doing something like this, people walk by back and forth, and before you know their name. They know your name. You start to get to know them. Even the homeless will drop their backpacks and say, what are you doing? And they'll participate. So you're even building a relationship with the homeless. So really what we're talking about is rebuilding relationships all around us, because right now we are in a relationship crisis with almost everything around us. And you start really easy and you start really small. And it is literally starting with the soil, the dirt, the patch around you that has been overlooked. And you start and you model the example of healing right there in your neighborhood, wherever you live. And it could be in an urban area, it can be in a rural area, it could be on the back porch of your apartment. But what you do is you begin to tend to it, and that will begin to draw people in. And I've seen that over and over and over again.
Yeah. It was interesting. The very first question I mentioned was to be able to sing a most non-negotiable personal value. The whole thing is about those values and holding to those values. And the beauty of, I see, your platform is it's so resonating around the seventh generation. And somebody had put in the chat the exact name of the tribe that it came from. And if I can look back on it real quickly, it's
Iroquois.
No, it wasn't the Iroquois. Well, maybe it was a part of the Confederation, but he had a specific name for it. I know the Iroquois were the Confederation.
Mm-hmm.
But it's so wonderful to be able to acknowledge that, and instead of, we get to become more of our own indigenous roots by digging into the earth, by looking at trapdoor spiders, because our boys always went off with a naturalist once a month and did vision quests and things like that, because that's life. We're exploring life now. We've been in a cocoon with COVID.
Right.
Now we're coming out with these ideas that are now the time has come. Like Jim had started, and I'd love to have Jim come back on and be able to dialogue a little bit right now if he has any questions, or this idea of having it with the Neptune and Jupiter. Boom, this is time. And it's right now.
That's right.
Jim.
Thank you, Reinette, very, very much for navigating through the technical challenges
Thank you.
that all of us deal with every day. Since we're on Zoom, we have various things. And just when I thought it was over, the technology opened back up. So just in conclusion, as you face the primary in June, so you've got, about 6-7 weeks to go. What are the issues that you feel, if you had to identify the top 1 or 2 issues that are facing the people of California as you've been experiencing it? I think it'd be of interest to us to hear what your analysis is of the electorate out there.
Well, interestingly enough, the biggest challenges we're facing is the censorship. Most people, because the press is very quiet around the fact there's actually a primary election coming up. Whereas with the recall last year, all you heard about was the recall. Now they're very quiet. Most Californians don't even know they have another opportunity to remove Newsom. So their other thing is the censorship where, for instance, in the beginning of January, I was just really launching my campaign and they took me down instantly on Instagram after I started getting momentum. So they saw that we're obviously a threat, and without warning, without a red flag, they just removed my gubernatorial Instagram site. My hashtags have been shadow banned. People cannot post what I'm doing. I mean, there's a real concerted effort to silence this campaign. And as I've said to people, we talk about election integrity, but how can you have election integrity if you can't hear from the candidates to begin with? So that's a huge piece. So what we're doing to counter that is we're talking about word of mouth. We're saying, look at folks, whether you live in California or not, you probably know Californians. Get the word out. Tell them about Reinette Senum. Tell them about this candidate with no party affiliation. Tell them about the 7th generation principle. And this is a word of mouth campaign to supersede the unfettered censorship. Of course, the other big thing is because we're not part of a big party system and a big donor base, we are absolutely as grassroots as you can get. And the fact that we are still in the ring for as small as we are really does speak volumes to this incredible dedicated team. And the top 3 things that I hear, by the way, on the campaign trails, first and foremost, people will ask, what's your party affiliation? We tell them none whatsoever. And people's response across the board is, thank God. Across the board. Then the next thing they say is, we just want to get rid of Newsom, just get rid of him. And the next thing they say is, we just want solutions. That's all we care about, is we want solutions. I'm like, well, that's great. I'm actually a solutionarian. I love problems and I love finding creative solutions. So there you go. So that's people are hungry. They're tired. They're exhausted. They have this COVID exhaustion. They're tired of the crime. They're tired of living in fear and concern. And just, it's like they're walking on eggshells. They have almost like PTSD from all this. And people, as I said, are now ready to heal.
And one other thing about she's going to have on any time now on her site is a 90-minute or so video about her whole platform, and it can be cut up into different pieces so that you can post it here, there, and everywhere. So that if you're dealing with the environment, or we're dealing with the money situation or the education situation, boom, boom. You want to tell them about that, Reinette?
Yes, we had a gentleman by the name of Kent Emmons. Kent Emmons just did a wonderful high-end, high production value interview with Bobby Kennedy Jr. Quite a few weeks ago. So they did the same thing for me. We sat down. It was several hours of interview. It'll be about a 2-hour interview that'll be cut up into small little type, topics and segments according to the issue. And then also has my story with, of course, some of the photographs and footage of my Alaska show or my Alaska journey, because basically that Alaska journey had a huge impact on me, my legacy, my leadership. So they really wanted to share that personal story because that's basically made me the person who I am today. And without knowing that story, you don't really know me and know how I show up and how I lead. And so that's being edited right now. It should be done anytime, actually. And once that's out, you will see it on electreinette.com, and we'll be sending it out in newsletters and social media and so on.
You know, I think some people would love to be able to have the energy that you have in what you're doing, because it's like you're live at 5 all the time.
My whole team is.
Well, thank you so much, Reinette. We know you're busy. We won't keep you, but all the best. And I'm a California resident. You've got my vote on primary day, and we'll do whatever we can to support you, just simply because out of the box thinking, out of the box citizen activists are what this country needs at every level.
That's right.
So I want to just thank you for your courage and your audacity to run in this the golden state of California, and we wish you all the best. And Kurt, thank you for bringing Reinette on. That was
well, Kurt and Jim, thank you so much, and thank you everyone for sticking through the technical difficulties of us being on the road on the campaign trail. I'm so appreciative, and again, just spread the word, everyone you know. And yes, we need donations, and yes, we need the word to get out there. And this is where everyone comes in. You know, it's not just about me running the campaign; it's about everyone spreading the word. So, thank you for this opportunity. What a beautiful group of people.
Reinette, we get to be able to be on an after chat now. There's a link that was in the chat, and I can send you the link again if you'd like in a text. But please come to the after chat if your connection.
Yes, I will do that, and I will hit that. I might go in and out a little bit. We're going into the grapevine, but I'll stay connected, and if I get disconnected, I'll jump back on again.
Well, beautiful.
Okay, everyone. Thank you so much. Kurt, thank you. Reinette, thank you, and good luck.
Thank you, Jim.
That brings our
Thank you
session
so much.
to a close. We'll proceed with the after chat group. Those of you who want to join, you'll see the link in the chat box. And then tomorrow, everyone, we're going to be talking with an Iroquois Oneida elder, Apila, Colorado, about her new book, Women Between the Worlds. She'll be telling the story of how she navigated between indigenous and Western civilizations and how that sculpted her life and the contributions that she's made. So that's tomorrow on Humanity Rising with Apila, Colorado. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
She tried to call me on this. Yeah. Here we go. Even.